Hey everyone, it's Jürgen here from Polymash, and I just wanted to shoot this quick video to accompany a new blog post that we're publishing in regards to a new podcasting industry study that's come out from Westwood One. Many of you know that there's the Infinite Dial study that publishes once a year, and Westwood One puts really comprehensive studies together about both radio and podcast listening behavior. Over the period of sort of 5 years, they've compiled a lot of interesting insights. And so I'm, in this post, wanted to point out a couple of things that jumped out at me that I think are worth celebrating and that, we're excited about in terms of seeing trends in the podcasting industry. And sort of the first major finding of the study was the rapid increase of female listenership in podcasting, as well as people who are producing podcasts. So while this trend is the most prevalent among younger women, female podcaster listeners are spending 27% more time with podcasts than they did before. So the stats are really pretty startling, and given the fact that, when you go back to the start of podcasting, when, in my opinion, it was sort of mostly a male-oriented, geeky kind of an endeavor, that's solidly turning around, and I'm really excited to see the trend. And we've been contacting and in touch with a lot of podcasting networks and podcast producers and innovators and app developers even, who are female and who are putting some really awesome solutions out into the space. And we're really excited about the diversity that this is creating. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, I'd invite you to click on the link below to actually read our blog post where we examine a lot of this in more detail. The second sort of insight that jumped out at me as a former app developer, having been familiar with Apple ecosystem, we've published apps for both Apple as well as for Android devices, but Apple's dominance in podcasting has been a much discussed topic. I don't think it's any news to say that Apple has not really been the most innovative in the podcasting space, and that continues to exhibit itself in terms of Spotify making major gains and continuing to make gains. You might have heard that they onboarded and bought the Joe Rogan Experience. They've invested heavily in podcasting, and that is definitely showing up in the statistics. And I also think that their developing of a podcast listening platform, their algorithm to sort of make discovery better, to make suggestions as to what you could listen to, all of those are innovations that you kind of just don't see on the Apple podcast platform, at least not yet. And so I think this is a great thing to move away from the walled garden approach that Apple often has. And I think it's great to see other platforms emerging. And, one other aspect of that is that younger podcast listeners apparently are quite willing to experiment. Millennials, for example, are using up to 3 to 4 different listening apps and platforms to consume their podcasts on. So I think that this diversity and having a lot more apps and choices in the marketplace is good competition, it's good for innovation, and it's good for entrepreneurs to offer us new listening experiences and ultimately better discovery. So it's good for both podcasters, indie podcasters, as well as for the listening audience, in my opinion. And the third insight that we're talking about a little bit in our blog post, again, the link is below in the description, is about YouTube. And YouTube, surprisingly, at least for some of us veterans, is now the preferred podcasting platform. In fact, it's the most frequently listened, most frequent platform that people are listening to among people who identify themselves as frequent podcast listeners. YouTube has now exceeded Apple Podcasts as one of the primary platforms, and that might be a little bit surprising, but I think it's the insights that this report and also some other resources that we point to in our blog post have about this are quite interesting. I think that people listen to podcasts mostly for entertainment and for education, and YouTube has been a major platform for this, and I think that's the reason that a lot of people prefer it. So check out the blog post and let me know in the comments what you think and what insights you might have gotten, and download by all means the Westwood One podcast report, because it's got, if you're interested in the space, it's got many interesting insights for us as podcasters, for us as an agency in podcast production, and also if you're just listening to podcasts and are interested in where the industry is heading, check it out. I'm signing off for now, and if you like this content, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.